Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, artists, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. Visit www.redaphid.com. It's Thursday, April 10th, and it's 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, and this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Remember, marijuana isn't going to re-legalize itself. You can make a difference in the fight to end adult marijuana prohibition. Join up with the talented activists of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws at NORML.org. While you're at it, stop by our blog at stash.norml.org. You can check the links on all our news stories, download our PodSafe music, read commentary from myself and other marijuana activists, and leave your comments in response. It's the cannabis community's online home at the blog only NORML can deliver. Your daily audio stash at stash.norml.org. Well, we've got a special treat for you today on the Stash. We're going to be speaking with Carlos Cardona from the band Omega Project. He's got quite a tale to tell about the misadventures they've had with law enforcement while on the road. We'll also follow up the interview with one of their tunes, Grow to Eat. Then we'll speak with Byrne from Patients Out of Time with a review of the 5th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics held last weekend in Pacific Grove, California. We've got a lot to cover, so sit back and relax with your favorite strain and enjoy your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Hillary Clinton says DEA raids on medical marijuana are not a high priority. Presidential candidate Senator Hillary Clinton swung through Oregon this week, my home state. My local weekly newspaper interviewed her about many subjects, including Oregon's successful medical marijuana program. It looks like she's waffling a bit from her earlier statements that she'd end the DEA raids on medical marijuana states. This is from the Willamette Week. Question: what would you do as president about the federal government not recognizing Oregon's medical marijuana program as legal? Hillary Clinton, quote, "We've got to have a clear understanding of the workings of pain and the control of pain, and there needs to be greater research and openness to the research that's already been done. I don't think it's a good use of federal law enforcement resources to be going after people who are supplying marijuana for medicinal purposes." Question: so you'd stop the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency's raids on medical marijuana grows? Hillary Clinton, quote, "What we would do is prioritize what the DEA should be doing, and that would not be a high priority. There needs to be a lot of other more important work that needs to be done." End quote. So does that mean that when the DEA finishes up with its important work, then the DEA should be tackling the low priority issue of raiding medical marijuana states? Look, Senator Clinton, it's not a fiscal issue, it's not a priority issue, it's a medical issue, and it's a states' rights issue. It's not a question of it being a poor use of federal resources. Even if it were an efficient use of federal resources, it would be wrong, period. Medical marijuana raids do not need to be reprioritized, they need to be eliminated. Minnesota medical marijuana, a politically risky vote? From the Minnesota Post. Legislation that would allow the medical use of marijuana by chronically and terminally ill patients was sent to the Minnesota House floor Wednesday, setting up a prolonged floor debate and a politically sensitive vote in the final weeks of the legislative session. The Ways and Means Committee approved the bill on a 13-4 vote. Backers don't expect the final House vote to be so lopsided, but that it will squeak through and go to Governor Tim Pawlenty, who has all but promised a veto. Representative Tom Huntley from the DFL Party Duluth is the chief House sponsor and acknowledges that in an election year when all House members must run, it could be a tough vote for some of his colleagues. Huntley said, quote, "Sure, it could be used against you. Incumbents who support the bill could face charges by opponents suggesting they are soft on drugs," end quote. Not to worry, said Tom Lehman, a lobbyist for healthcare organizations, including the Marijuana Policy Project and Minnesotans for Compassionate Care. 12 states have passed medical marijuana laws, and no legislator in those states has ever been defeated for his or her vote on that particular piece of legislation. That's fact, said Lehman. It's a good vote in an election year. Well, it's time to get through to these final roadblocks, these governors, first in Connecticut with Jody Rell, and now in Minnesota with Tim Pawlenty, who ignore the overwhelming will of the voters and the bipartisan passage of medical marijuana bills in their legislatures. Let's get on the phone, Minnesotans, and everyone else, and politely tell Governor Pawlenty that the people want medical marijuana to be legal. You can get the address for the Office of the Governor on our blog at stash.normal.org, or just call toll-free 1-800-657-3717. German dealers add lead to marijuana. From The Age in Australia. Drug dealers looking for extra profits apparently added lead flakes to packets of marijuana, inflating their value while causing dozens of cases of serious poisoning, doctors in Germany reported today. The lead made up, on average, 10% of the material in the marijuana packets, boosting profits by about $1,500 per kilogram, Franziska Busse of the University Hospital of Leipzig reported. The researchers wrote in a letter to the New England Journal of Medicine, quote, "One package contained obvious lead particles. This strongly indicated that the lead was deliberately added to the package rather than inadvertently incorporated into the marijuana plants from contaminated soil," end quote. The problem was discovered last year when the first of 29 patients, aged 16 to 33, started showing up in 4 Leipzig hospitals with abdominal cramps, fatigue, nausea, and varying degrees of anemia. One was ill enough to be suffering from hallucinations. It took 8 weeks to uncover a common pattern. All were young, smoked, had body piercings, and were either students or unemployed. All regularly used marijuana. 3 patients brought in their stashes. All samples tested positive for lead contamination, with one having lead flakes that were obvious under a microscope. After 2 more weeks, an anonymous screening program for marijuana users uncovered 95 other people who needed treatment. Dr. Busse's colleague, Dr. Michael Stumvoll, said in an email that about 200 people had now been identified. The screening was continuing, he said, although it did not appear that the practice was continuing among dealers. The German team wrote, quote, "The medical community, including pediatricians, should consider adulterated marijuana as a potential source of lead intoxication," end quote. Once again, we see the sad but predictable consequences of prohibition. When your product is illegal, you don't have to submit it to any sort of government testing or licensing program. Unregulated markets will go to almost any length to maximize profits, whether it's a Chinese company cutting corners by using lead-based paints on toys, or a German pot dealer adding weight to the pot with lead flakes. Now, on the other side of the coin, when a drug is legal and regulated, these things don't happen. When's the last time you heard of anyone going blind from drinking impure moonshine whiskey?
is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death.
Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
Well, I'm getting a lot of attention on my post on Stoners in the Mist, the anti-drug ad that appears on the internet from the Above the Influence campaign that is paid for by your tax dollars. NORML's executive director, Alan St. Pierre, has turned in a Freedom of Information Act request to the government to find out exactly how much of your taxpayer dollars went into producing this birth of a nation-like documentary-style insult to cannabis consumers all over the United States of America. We also got noticed by the political blog Wonkette, who entitles their post, "The War on Marijuana Cigarettes, Stoners in the Mist is the funniest anti-drug thing since Tom Harkin." They also go on to say, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin didn't go nearly far enough when he suggested that smoking pot makes you sell your children. Thankfully, we have anti-drug organization Above the Influence, which has created a series of documentaries tracking the behaviors of savage pot smokers on Cannabis Isle. Watch as this old white man goes out of his way to stare at two teens smoking pot in a basement by themselves, then spends hundreds of millions of dollars on new technologies to crack down on them. The war on drugs is in full swing on Cannabis Isle. It looks like it got a pretty good response from a lot of the readers, too. Check out our blog at stash.normal.org. I've collected some of the funniest comments that were posted on Wonkette. I think my favorite was, "Just sit right down and you hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port in search of an awesome spliff. No phones, no lights, no motor cars, not a single luxury. But they don't give a rosy rat's ass 'cause they're high on THC. They're high on THC. Pardon me, I'll try not to sing on the podcast ever again. It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org. All right, we have a special treat here on the Daily Audio Stash. This is my first opportunity to interview one of the musicians that we're going to be playing in our musical break. We're joined here by Carlos Cardona from the band Omega Project. And Carlos, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you so much for having us. I really do appreciate it.
Well, before we get to the bad news that we wanted to talk about, let's talk about your band a little bit, Omega Project. Where are you guys based out of?
Currently, we are based out of Santa Cruz, California.
Oh, excellent. And what's coming up on the horizon here, gig-wise, for you guys? Where can people catch a listen to Omega Project?
Right now, we have a couple of really interesting things coming up. We have Wham, which hopefully most people out there know. I'm sure this audience does. Wham, based out of Santa Cruz, an amazing organization. We are playing their 15th birthday party, and it's on 420 at 420 for $4.20, and it's at Club Dakota, downtown Pacific Avenue, Santa Cruz. And it's a superhero, supervillain party. So, you come dressed as your favorite superhero or supervillain. So that one should be great. We totally back Wham. They're an amazing organization out of Santa Cruz, helping to get terminally ill patients free cannabis, and it's really an amazing group. So if you don't know about them, wham.org. I'm sure you do know about them.
That's right. We'll have a link up to them at the Stash blog, wham.org. That's their Women's Alliance for Medical Marijuana. They've been doing great work helping patients down there in California. Now, who makes up the band, and what kind of sound is your band? What's your band all about?
Well, currently the band is me, Carlos Cardona. I do the vocals and the guitar. I have a guy that I've been playing music with since high school, pretty much. His name is Patience Ahanui. He does guitar and bass and backup vocals, and now we have somebody on drums named Frank Apra. We do two different things currently. We do an acoustic set, an acoustic style, which is me and Patience on guitar. It's a really beautiful heart song with two-part vocal harmonies and me on lead. And then we do an electric jam band type of thing with drums and bass. But really, the Omega Project, it's a band. I want it to be a lot more. I have this right here I wanted to read. It's the Omega Manifesto. It kind of sums up the Omega Project in a poetic form. Facing forward into the vastness of eternity and gazing back through the endless corridors of time, one finds it overwhelming to be so intimately revealed in the great now. And now that tends to be confusing or, as of late, even terrifying. This terror is founded on lies, and these lies are founded on ignorance. This ignorance stems from the human race's seemingly endless quest to destroy the planet, thus forever genetically mutating our beautiful spirit of eternal nature into the bloated plastic gods of materialism. That is why in these desperate last days, before our right to think is so shamelessly stolen from us, as has been our divine inheritance of this kingship, of this island of paradise in the vast ocean of the cosmos, before the sacred breath of life is carelessly suffocated by toxic fumes, and before the last pure beauty of the biosphere is eventually raped for commercial profit, we step forward as eternal beings of divine love and light and heal this reflection of our wounded spirit. This is the Omega Project.
Wow, that's very poetic and very well said. Yes, glad that you read that. So let's get now to the reason that you got in contact with NORML. I got your information forwarded to me from the executive staff out at NORML, and apparently you were involved in a pretty harrowing ordeal involving law enforcement. Why don't you tell our listeners about the ordeal and what kind of lessons you may have learned from it?
Okay, for sure. First I just want to say big love to Alan St. Pierre. Thanks for the connect on this. He is obviously a champion to so many people, whether they know about him or not. And big love to NORML, and obviously big love to you. Thank you so much. You guys.
Oh, thank you so much.
Every day I realize that the freedoms I have are based on things that you guys have done for us in the past. So much love to you. But what happened to me is, of course, this is kind of juvenile, but you know, in a just world, you would be able to do this. I sent my friend some mushrooms, and my girlfriend sent her friend some herbs, and we pretty much got arrested for it, which sucks, of course, as anybody out there can imagine. It really sucked for us even worse because the Omega Project was getting ready to go live on TV. We had already done sound check and everything. We were going on at 7, and the police arrested me at 6:50 right before we went on TV.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of underground message that was to me, but, you know, that's the way it goes. And that being said, we're still working it out, and we still may do some jail time, may not. I'm not totally sure. But just being arrested for medicine, which I do consider mushrooms medicine, I do consider herbs medicine. I wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for those things. Being put in jail, realizing now up front and personal about this insane war on drugs and what it's doing and the money it's wasting, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but the facts are unbelievable. You know, 800,000 people arrested each year for marijuana, 700,000 for just possession. 3 states, including California, spend more on corrections and education. 60% of people in prison are there for drugs. And then the 3 strikes law, three felonies in California equals natural life. I mean, it's absolutely insane. For as long as there's been recorded history, people have been able to experiment with their minds and their bodies. And, you know, there's been 5,000 recorded years of cannabis use, 0 overdoses. The facts are in. It's 2008. With global warming and with gasoline wars and all this stuff, it's time to legalize hemp, both as a medicine and as an industry. So that's pretty much what I've learned from getting.
Wow, absolutely. And so do you incorporate a lot of these themes into your music? Are you the main songwriter for the band?
Yeah, I write most of the songs, so I definitely want to give credit to Patience. You know, we've been playing since high school, so I give him 50% credit on everything. He's definitely an equal songwriter, but I kind of just spearhead more of the organization with help from Natalie Ellison, of course. But, yeah, we do definitely incorporate these things, and we are more and more than ever, obviously. Getting arrested right before I went on TV, to me, because I like to see things as symbols, was just a very powerful symbol. You know, and it's time to use my voice for what's trying to be taken away from me. So, yeah, for sure, we try. That's why we're trying to back Wham, and we're trying to back NORML and High Times. I want to give love to Rick Cusick of High Times, who connected us with Alan. So
Okay, so aside from your 420 gig that you're having in Santa Cruz, where can people expect to see you throughout the West Coast, or are you touring other than just the West Coast?
Yeah, well, right now we have 2 more gigs beyond that here in Santa Cruz. We're actually doing an April 22nd Earth Day show at Moe's, which is a really cool local venue. And pretty much you can check out any information about the band at omegaprojectmusic.com, which is, I know this is a podcast, so pretty much everybody who's hearing this is going to be online anyway. So omegaprojectmusic.com. And then another webpage, Cardona, my last name, Cardona.wordpress.com. That's pretty much the information about anywhere we'll be. At the current moment, I don't have anything booked beyond 507, but we do have another gig at Miramar on the Wharf in downtown Santa Cruz on May the 4th. And beyond that, we really are trying to connect with people. If anybody out there is hearing this and they want to do hemp legalization things, if they need a band, if they need a voice, please contact us, the Omega Project at onebox.com. I really am aware now of the injustices of people, and I want to help raise the voice of people in jail, people who don't have money, people who don't play music or write poetry, people who don't have a voice. That's what I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Carlos. And, I think you make a good point there about how, being arrested at the time you were arrested was very symbolic, and it kind of, brings the issue to the fore. I think what we have as a problem here is that while there are, 800,000 arrests every year for marijuana, there's over 15 million people that are smoking marijuana monthly. So, talking about, the chances that you're going to get popped are actually kind of low. And so I think a lot of people just take this attitude of, well, it didn't happen to me, it's happening to someone else, I don't need to worry about it, I'm careful. And, sometimes it doesn't matter how careful you are, you still get busted.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a great point. And you really don't know what you have until it's gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I myself have done it in the past. You pass somebody who has like a hemp legislature thing, which everybody should check out Jack Herrera's California hemp legislature. And, you just pass it. You're like, they never passed it before. What are they going to do now? But in the past, they didn't have global warming. In the past, they didn't have resource wars. And now, in the past, they didn't have pharmaceutical industries trying to actually patenting people's DNA. I mean, now more than ever, the growth is exponential. We're moving into a point where, society, technology, religion, everything is going to change right before. It is changing before our eyes in an exponential fashion. So we get to be the people who program it or write it or dictate what the next thing is going to be. It's an exciting time to be alive, but it's time to be vigilant and definitely step forward for the medicines that humankind has a right to have and has for as long as there's been history. I read some really great stuff online about the cannabinoid receptors that developed in the brain having evolved a long time ago before plants and animals even separated. So in some sense, it's something that's been with us for so long. And the model that we're basing jail on and all this stuff is so outdated that we're lucky to be the people who dictate what the next thing is going to be. But, it's time to step forward and really do that passionately.
Now, the song we're going to be playing here for the podcast today is one of your songs, and this is called Grow to Eat. What is this song about, and what inspired you to write it?
This song really was more of a metaphor, but I chose it to go well with this one because this is obviously about marijuana reform, and part of that is people being able to grow, mostly for personal. Part of the reason I believe I got arrested is because I went to go try and hook somebody else up or do it and that kind of thing. And that's the problem, whenever you go to step across that line. But for personal use, and I witnessed it here in Santa Cruz, the police are really super cool about personal use. They understand exactly what I said. People use drugs. Instead of sending them to jail, there's another way to look at it. So, that being said, I chose that song for this. The chorus is, reap what you sow, grow to eat. So it meant for me at a time I wrote it when I was pretty depressed. I wrote it when I was pretty depressed, and I just wanted to grow, like a seed sprouting. But now I use it for people out there with the herbs. It's time to let the medicine grow.
Well, Carlos, it's quite the story, and we'll be keeping in touch with your band. We've got links to the band and the websites up on our blog at stash.normal.org. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, and isn't today your birthday?
Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, today is my 27th birthday. Thank you.
Well, happy birthday to Carlos, and give him a birthday present by clicking on the links at our blog and downloading the music and spread the music around. Together we can all make a change in ending adult marijuana prohibition. Carlos, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Russ.
Hello, I'm Casper Leach, host of Time for Hemp. Did you know that police arrested a record 829,625 people in the United States for marijuana violations in 2006? Marijuana arrests now comprise nearly 44% of all drug arrests in the United States. Of those charged with marijuana violations, approximately 89% were charged with possession only. The total number of marijuana arrests in the United States for 2006 far exceeded the total number of arrests for all violent crimes combined. Enforcing marijuana prohibition costs taxpayers between $10 and $12 billion annually and has led to the arrest of nearly 20 million Americans. We must end this war on drugs. With your help, we can. Please join LEAP, the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and become part of the solution to ending this civil war. You can do so by going to leap.cc.
Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take the time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. Well, of course, our musical break today features the man we were just speaking to, Carlos Cardona, and his band Omega Project. Now, these guys are not just a jam band, but classic rock, R&B, reggae, funk, and I do mean the best of those genres, blended into the perfect festival band. And I do mean festival band. They have played Seattle Hemp Fest, Amsterdam's Cannabis Cup, the Kauai Freedom Festival. They're the perfect community festival band, and they not only know how to jam their asses off, their lyrics prove they have something to say. Visit their website at omegaprojectmusic.com to sample and purchase their amazing music and check out tour dates. If the Omega Project is playing anywhere near you, round up your friends and get ready for a party with a purpose. If you're lucky enough to be in Santa Cruz on 4/20, you can hear them play at the Women's Alliance for Medical Marijuana 15th birthday party. Lucky indeed. This is the Omega Project and Grow to Eat.
You gotta reap what you sow. You gotta sow to reap. You gotta give your plants water. You gotta grow to eat. Hey, you gotta reap what you sow. You gotta sow to reap now. You gotta give your plants water. You gotta grow to eat now. 'Cause I might as well tell you, Lord, I might as well say that we all get better with it. You know you work, man, I like to play. I change the world daily with the things I say. 'Cause if we create the things we know, then you make me, baby, I'll make you. We'll make the world better with the things that you do. We'll teach them to be children and the truth. No, reap what you sow. You gotta sow to reap. You gotta give your plants some water. You gotta grow to eat. Man, you gotta reap what you sow. You gotta sow to reap now. You gotta give your plants water. You gotta grow to eat now. We all get better each day. And though you work and I like to play, change the world daily with the things I say. 'Cause if we create the things we know, then you make me, baby, I'll stay true. We'll make the world better with the things that we choose. We'll teach our little children the truth. No. Reap what you sow. You gotta sow to reap. You gotta give your plants some water. You gotta
Hi, I'm Russ Belville, the Associate Director of Oregon NORML, a chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I'm proud to announce the release from Oregon NORML of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act Handbook. This is the definitive guide for the patient, caregiver, or grower in Oregon trying to learn the ins and outs of our medical marijuana program. The guide answers common questions from how do I register with the state to use cannabis medicinally? And what are the possession limits regarding plants and medicine? To questions like, what do I tell my landlord or the police about my medical marijuana? And what if my doctor won't help me with a marijuana recommendation? The handbook also contains a complete copy of the Oregon Revised Statutes governing medical marijuana. For your own copy, check out our website at ornorml.org. Well, in our review of medical marijuana here on the Daily Audio Stash, one of the important things that we have going on are the conferences and the clinics that we put on to help educate people about the medicinal uses of cannabis. And one of the most prominent is the clinical conference on Cannabis Therapeutics. The fifth of these conferences was held at the Asilomar Conference Center out in Pacific Grove, California on the weekend of April 5th and 6th. And to discuss the results of that conference, we're joined now by Al Byrne, who is a co-founder of the group Patients Out of Time. Al, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Good morning, Russ. Glad to be here.
So at the Asilomar Conference there in Pacific Grove, what were some of the topics that were covered and some of the speakers that were involved there at the conference?
Well, we covered a wide range of topics. The theme of the conference was cannabis re-entering mainstream medicine. And we tried to carry that theme throughout the speakers' talks. One of the beginning speakers, a keynote on the first day, was Dr. Donald Tashkin of UCLA.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Tashkin has been involved for decades in studying the pulmonary effects of smoked cannabis and smoked tobacco. He made his presentation on Friday morning, and the presentation was really the compilation of 30 years or so of these studies. And his conclusion, to jump to the bottom line, was that smoking tobacco is very bad for you, and that smoking cannabis will not give you cancer, it will not give you COPD, it will not give you emphysema. In fact, there seems to be some little bit of protective agency within cannabis that actually protects the lungs. So that was good news for all the patients that don't have a vaporizer or some other similar use. Another keynote speaker didn't show up because his mother had a stroke just before he was to lose Spain, and that was Dr. Guzman from Spain. But we did see the results of his work. He sent his paperwork along, and I had talked to him on the phone. And essentially, Dr. Guzman in animal studies has found that a tincture of cannabis injected, if you will, directly into brain tumors, a certain type of brain tumor, causes that brain tumor to evaporate.
Wow.
Basically disappear. Very, very, very interesting and rewarding information, especially because the tumor in question is a killer. If you have this particular brain tumor, it will kill you. So this is a remarkable step through in cannabis's anti-tumor activity, which has long been suspected, and now Dr. Guzman is pretty much proved. We had other wonderful presentations. Melanie Dreyer, who's the dean of the nursing school at Rush University in Chicago, talked about her experience over 30 years again, mainly with Jamaican women, during their pregnancy and following their children after birth, and reported that there is no harmful effects of using cannabis during pregnancy.
Wow.
And the offspring of women in Jamaica that use cannabis during pregnancy are just fine. Not only are they fine, on the various scales that are used to evaluate infant abilities, infant size, health, growth, etc., they come out just slightly better than mothers of children that didn't use any cannabis at all.
That is amazing. And, you know, I've been following a few stories here where women have been charged with child abuse or other charges if they fail a drug screen during their pregnancy. And so this is really good news. I wonder if we can get public policy changed to match the facts on that one.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Dean Dreyer has actually been reporting this type of information now for, a good 5 or 8 years. The problem we have, of course, is the same problem we have with cannabis with the federal government, is they either have a good way of suppressing the truth. At the very least, they maul the truth and put in their own myths, and that distorts everything. But nevertheless, the data is there, the science is there on the pregnancy, and this should show that these women that you refer to, and I've heard about that too, is completely unfounded. It's totally unfounded.
Yeah, just another way to discriminate against the cannabis user.
Oh, exactly. Yes, that's what it is.
Now, how was the attendance at the conference? Did you have a lot of the general public?
It was very good. We were in the 300 range someplace. We had a lot of press. Everything that was, every presentation was professionally videotaped. And anybody listening to this broadcast here can find these presentations probably within a 2-week period on Google Video. All they need do is search Patients Out of Time, and these videos and these presentations will appear. Also on that same Google Video Patients Out of Time list is about 45 other presentations that have been from the past. Previous conferences that we had at the University of Iowa or the University of Virginia, et cetera, were also up there. So, for instance, if one of your readers or listeners does have they are pregnant, they have pregnancy questions, they'll be able to go online and listen to Dean Dreyer tell them about cannabis use in pregnancy, and involved in that will be her recommendations of where to go to get more information. That's true of ADHD. It's true of pain use with cannabis. All of those discussions are on the internet right now, and like I say, we'll be adding the last ones we did here last weekend as soon as we possibly can. Now, for our listeners out there, what is the Patients Out of Time website? It is medicalcannabis.com. Medicalcannabis.com. And I would also call the attention of your listeners to another serious website. People that really want to get into the research and find out exactly what their problems may be and how cannabis could help them, they can go to drugscience.org. Drugscience.org is a sister group of ours that is responsible for the petition to reschedule cannabis, which is basically a demand by some of us against the federal government to reschedule cannabis from 1 to 3. They can find all about that process at drugscience.org. They can find out about what we do at medicalcannabis.com. Now, you said the theme of the conference was about re-entering the mainstream. To what end or what sort of presentations did we have any doctors or nurses organizations there to help to bring cannabis into the mainstream? Well, that's a good question, Russ, and I'm not sure that we directly, had a recommendation of how to do that. Our thought with the theme and the presentations that tried to follow that theme was the researchers and doctors that talked tried to present their science in a way that would show that this was not new, that some of the, quote, discoveries that they were making about these various maladies that cannabis can help are actually being rediscovered, that while they're doing their research, they're also looking back in historical records and finding out that researchers in the 1800s and the 1900s also went through this process and found that cannabis was a very valuable medicine. So in the re-entering theme, what we tried to do is show the audience, including the video audience that has yet to see these presentations, that cannabis has been around for a long time. It is totally safe, and it is, in fact, been a medicine in the United States as well as other countries for thousands of years. So re-entering mainstream medicine is also like a wake-up call. This isn't a new drug. This isn't a new plant. It's been here. We're human beings. We got here before pharmaceutical companies were invented. And most of us, probably, our ancestors used cannabis to get here. I imagine so. Now, when we speak of the medical profession in general, just the overall population of doctors and nurses,
How close do you feel are we to getting widespread acceptance by doctors and nurses, or have we reached that point already?
No, we have not reached that point. How close we are is debatable, but I'd say we're less than a third of the way.
Okay.
And that's a problem in my mind. We believe, and I heard, we invite these speakers to speak. We don't tell them what to say. And I listened to what they said, and virtually every one of them talked about education and talked about getting the medical community educated. That had to happen, and it hasn't.
Okay.
I believe groups that we work with, Russ, and we all know who they are, have done a really good job of convincing, educating the American public that cannabis is good medicine. I think that's a given now. Something like 4 out of 5 people are on our side. But we do not have that medical community convinced. And the reason we don't is because the research that is at drugscience.org and at medicalcannabis.com and is at these conferences has not been properly identified to the medical community. That may change. I think it is. We are getting contacted all the time by various organizations. One of the principal speakers on Saturday in Asilomar was the director of the Department of Ethics for the American Nurses Association. And she told us very, very clearly that the American Nurses Association has a problem with the federal government in medical cannabis. That as nurses, they advocate for patients and patients' rights, and they find the American government standing right in the middle of that advocacy in a negative way, and they don't like it at all. She told us that the American Nurses Association will get much more aggressive in taking this issue forward in their lobbying and education efforts. And she also told us that the ANA is the 17th largest lobby in the country.
Wow.
So there is some real power there. And I think that if the nursing community is definitely ahead of the medical doctor community, but I'm hoping that this emphasis by the ANA and other things that are happening will result in doctors getting on board at a faster rate than we see now.
Oh, we all hope so. So it seems to be that it's not an issue of doctors just fearing the reprisals from the federal government. They actually buy into some of this reefer madness.
I think they do. There are some that just have not taken the time to investigate the whole issue, and they do buy in. I would think, though, Ross, my call would be that the majority of the medical doctors are simply scared. They're scared of losing their license, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they have a right to be. The federal government has shown that they will be unreasonable and nasty.
Yes.
So they have a right to be worried. I'd be worried if I was a doctor, but on the other hand, you're sworn to take care of people's health, and that's what you got to do. And what we see now in a lot of cases with cannabis not being provided by patients is really an example of bad health policy. But that being all said, everybody needs to understand that these conferences that we provide, and they're every 2 years, Russ, these conferences are accredited. That means that the attendees at these conferences, the doctors and nurses, get continuing education credits for the attendance at these presentations. Now, that accreditation comes directly from the American Medical Association and the American Nurses Association. They are the final okayers, if you will, of the faculty and the data being presented. It doesn't meet their criteria. If we really weren't talking about a medicine, they wouldn't accredit these conferences. But in fact, they've accredited 5. So the notion that the American Medical Association doesn't support medical marijuana is ludicrous.
Yeah.
The federal government may say what they want, and obviously they got a lot of people believing that. But it's simply not the case. The facts are the American Medical Association, to repeat, has accredited 5 of our conferences in a row for educational credits for doctors and nurses. And you can't stop the fact.
That's right. Now, for 2010, looking forward to the next conference, is there dates and times set up yet, or a location?
Yeah, well, we always look for the spring. We like April, May. It seems to work for us. It will be 2010, and right now I have three groups or three areas of the country that have asked us to consider having the conference there. One would be out of Burlington, Vermont, out of the University of Vermont system, their medical school, and that would be placed somewhere in New England. The second people that have approached us have been at the medical school at the University of Washington in Seattle. That looks like a great place to have a conference. And the third place is New Mexico, in and around Albuquerque, the University of New Mexico Medical School. So those are our three choices at the moment for 2010, but we won't really have a firm date set, a firm date in place set until probably 3 months from now.
Excellent. All right. Well, Al Byrne from Patients Out of Time, he's the co-founder, and just got to tell us a little bit about the clinical conference on cannabis therapeutics. You can learn more about that and everything else you need to know about that at the Patients Out of Time website, which is at medicalcannabis.com. We'll have links up on the Stash blog at stash.normal.org. Al, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Russ. I appreciate it.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.normal.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with our cannabis quote from Tom Robbins, the famous writer. Quote, "In 30 years of close observation, I've never seen an act of violence, aggression, jealousy, or egomania triggered by the use of marijuana. In fact, marijuana seems to possess all of the benevolence, grace, clarity, insightfulness, and calm that the state-sanctioned drug, booze, so sadly lacks." End quote. Yes, I agree. In fact, the way I like to put it is that marijuana smokers live the life that you see in beer commercials. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for listening to The Stash today. We'll be back tomorrow for Cannabis Community Friday, so tune in and take care of each other, tokers.